Good afternoon to you. We have breaking news out of Hampton, a guilty verdict in the Cory Bigsby murder trial. Dan Kennedy is live in Hampton with details and reaction to this verdict. Dan.
Janet, that guilty verdict coming down just within the last couple minutes. I sprinted out of the courthouse to bring you this news. On the charge of second-degree murder, the jury found Cory Bigsby guilty. On the charge of concealing a body, the jury found Cory Bigsby guilty. That is guilty on both counts for the murder of his son, Codi Bigsby, the young 3-year-old, 4 at the time that he was reported missing back in January of 2022. The prosecution told us throughout this case that Codi was in fact murdered months prior, before he was reported missing. In June of 2021 is when the prosecution says that he was killed. Let's walk over here. Nehemiah is the photographer going to be working with me on bringing you this live report. And shortly, we should expect some of the members of this trial, some important members of this trial, to begin leaving the courtroom. And we kind of want to get their reaction to what happened today. We would like to hear from Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell and his assistant senior Commonwealth's attorney Dylan Arnold, who prosecuted this case. This is a rare no-body case. It is only the 4th no-body case to be prosecuted in Hampton Roads history. All of them, now officially with Cory Bigsby, have ended with guilty verdicts. The jury, made up of 8 women and 4 men, gave their unanimous verdict just a few minutes ago. I understand the jury's going to be walking out, so we don't want to show the jury. Instead, we're going to pan the camera elsewhere, give them space, give them privacy. But in fact, the jury of 12, after a long 7 days, now leaving that courthouse. Janet, if you have any questions, feel free to direct them my way. This, has been a 7-day trial, culminated with closing arguments this morning from the defense, from the prosecution, and then it ended with the guilty verdicts this afternoon. But Janet, what is striking about this case is that there was no physical evidence. It was only circumstantial evidence that the jury was able to convict. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no body, and at the end of the day, Janet, the jury said that did not matter.
All right, and Dan, it seems like they came up with that decision very quickly. How long exactly did they deliberate?
Yeah, Janet, so they began deliberations at about 11:25 this morning, and then about an hour later at 12:30, they all had a question. They wanted to review 2 pieces of video that was entered into evidence earlier this week. One of those videos was an interrogation between a Hampton Police Division detective and Cory Bigsby a few days after he reported his son missing. Another video was of the first responding officer to the Bigsby home on January 31st, 2022. And in that video, you see Cory Bigsby offer up Codi's pillowcase to use as scent for a tracking dog. Ultimately, the tracking dog K9 handler got up on the stand and testified that they used that pillowcase and were not able to find any scent of Codi. So that was at 12:30 when the jury returned asking to see those 2 pieces of video, and then an hour later they had their verdict. So Janet, that is a long way of answering your question. The answer to your question is under 2 hours that this jury took to deliberate on these charges of murder and concealing a body.
All right, Dan, one other thing I wanted to bring up, yesterday you talked about the aunt testifying, Codi's aunt, and she mentioned that she saw Codi, I believe, in September of 2021, but yet the prosecution was saying that they believed that Codi died in, I guess it was June of 2021. There was that discrepancy there. Right. You then had another witness who came up and said that he saw Codi about 2 days or so before he was reported missing. I know in that moment there may have been some doubt created, but talk about how the prosecution handled that particular point when that came up.
Yeah, ultimately, Janet, it was going to be up to this jury to decide the credibility of each and every witness that they heard from. That included the credibility of Cory Bigsby's sister, Codi's aunt, who you're talking about, and that also included the credibility of the 7-year-old who testified in this case. That would be Codi Bigsby's 7-year-old brother. Ultimately, the jury weighed the credibility of the testimony, and they decided that they chose to believe the testimony of the 7-year-old brother and the testimony of Codi Bigsby's mother, who said that she had not seen Codi Bigsby, had not seen a picture of him, had not heard from him since at least June of 2021. And then you have the brother, the 7-year-old brother, who got up on the stand, and this morning prosecutors said that that was their key witness. It was not the confession letters from jail, and we know there were 4 confession letters from Cory Bigsby in jail. The prosecution said that's not what we're basing our case on. That's just the icing on top. That's the confirmation for our evidence. They said the big moment in the trial for them, for the prosecution, was hearing from that 7-year-old testify that he found his brother dead and last saw his brother dead in bed. But Janet, ultimately, we did hear the aunt's testimony saying that she saw Codi alive at a family gathering in September of 2021. But there was no photo evidence of that. We also heard from a Hampton man who said that he saw Codi alive at a Food Lion just a couple days before his face was plastered all over the news on January 31st, 2022. But again, there was no photo evidence of that. So even though this case was built on circumstantial evidence, ultimately the jury decided to opt for the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses as opposed to the defense's. And Janet, forgive me as I keep looking back. We are waiting for some of the key attorneys to walk out of these doors. We want to hear from Curtis Brown, who is the lead attorney for Cory Bigsby. Mm-hmm. He's aided by Ken Singleton and Amini Matheny Willard. They have not had a comment for us all week long, so this could be our first chance to hear from Bigsby's attorneys and perhaps how they plan to move forward. Do they have an appeal that they want to make at some point? But their client right now looking up to 45 years in prison. Of course, he will be sentenced at a later date.
Yeah, and Dan, you touched on this when you talked about the 7-year-old little boy who testified. And then, we saw the mother on the stand. We saw the aunt on the stand. And the interesting thing is that the mother and the son, the little boy, they testified for the prosecution and the aunt for the defense. And right. it just sort of underscores how emotional, and if you need to go, I see you looking, we're prepared to break away there, but
no, just, you're good. Yep.
It just
we are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Janet, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, it just underscores how emotional this whole thing has been from the very beginning. We know how the community just rallied around that little boy, just so concerned about his well-being and just how much people came out and they were searching, the vigils that were held, that fence that was put up in Buckrow where you had all the little stuffed animals and the letters, just extremely heartfelt. And then you see the trial happen and the family members having to testify in that trial. That must have been something to see and
Janet,
hear.
on that note, this is a woman who has been a Codi supporter from the start, Nancy Strickland.
You gotta saw his face. When we seen his face, we fell in love with him. And he became 7x7's child. That's what Cory Bigsby did.
We got justice.
Yeah.
Where's Codi?
Right.
Man, y'all been out here for a long time looking for baby.
Oh my God, guys.
Nancy, what are your general emotions right now? You were here every day of this trial. What does it feel like to hear the guilty verdict?
Oh my God, I wanted to get up and scream, but I couldn't. I wanted to get up and scream. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus, because we've wanted this for 26 months, and we finally got it.
Well, what was the turning moment in the case? You heard all the testimony. What was the strongest?
For me, is when the man got up and said he seen Codi in the grocery store.
Nancy, with the money you collected, would you be buying the bench now?
And yes, Mom gives me permission, yes. So, oh God.
The man in the grocery store.
Yes, when the man in the grocery store said he seen Codi that weekend, 2 days before Cory reported him missing. And it was DJ. It was not even Codi. It was DJ, and the man said, "This is him."
What's next for the Where is Codi movement?
Searching, researching.
You're not giving up on finding him?
I will not give up on Cory Bigsby. I will not do it.
And ma'am, you were in here all week long too. What's your reaction here in the guilty verdict today?
When the Commonwealth said, with all the evidence, he wrote his own confession. No one forced him. He wasn't crazy. That was guilt from that child, letting him know you're guilty.
So for you, it was the jail confession letters.
Jail confessions. Yes.
Yes.
He sealed his fate.
Yes,
no one
did.
could ever describe something like that. No.
All right, we're going to come over here and try to grab some members of the family. We appreciate the members of the community. This is Cory Bigsby's sister. Let's see if she has a comment. She testified on the stand yesterday.
I never lied from the beginning, and I don't lie now. Excuse me.
Tandalia, so you saw Codi on September 22nd?
You said excuse her. Don't put nothing in my face.
Mr. Kennedy.
I said don't put nothing in my face. Don't ask me no questions.
So the woman who we tried to ask questions from there was the sister of Cory Bigsby. She was the one who took the stand the other day, and we're going to go over here and try to grab an attorney. This is Mr. Curtis Brown. He was the lead counsel for Cory Bigsby, and we're going to see if Mr. Brown, can we just get a statement from you on the guilty of your client today?
No, you can't get one from me. You keep putting the news reports like you put them. Okay.
Mr. Singleton, would you have any comment today?
I have no comment.
Any next move?
How do you feel about this?
They got what they wanted, so I'm hoping that they're happy and hoping that you all are happy. Okay, you understand? I'm hoping that they're happy. You all presented the case. You all presented the case the way that y'all wanted, as if he was guilty already and everything. So y'all should be satisfied.
Sir, are you going to appeal?
We'll talk about it.
Mr. Brown, do you feel as though you had a fair chance with this case?
No.
You were in there. You were in the court, okay?
Yes.
I called Mr. Bell. I said that everybody, you striking all these black people. You black, I said I'm black.
Nothing to do with it. We're talking about a child. We're talking about a 3-year-old.
Quit throwing race
We're talking about
Okay, that is Mr. Curtis Brown. That is the lead attorney for Cory Bigsby, offering no comment on this case, not even saying if they would plan to appeal. Amina, would you have anything to say? Okay. All right, let's go over here. This is Mr. Bell. We're live on the air. If we could just get your reaction.
We're going to do a press conference. Follow me.
Okay.
You can do your press.
We will do that. Chief Weidman, while we have you, we know that you were not the chief at the time, but you've certainly been following this case very closely.
I'll follow along with Mr. Anton's comments.
Okay. We're going to expect to hear from Chief Weidman and Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell here at a news conference that we said should be happening very shortly. Janet, as you can see, a lot unfolding out here, but we're trying to speak to as many people as possible. Any other questions you have for us at this time, Janet?
Yeah, Dan, you're doing a wonderful job of getting the reaction, and I'm just really touched by Nancy, the first lady that you spoke to, and that just speaks to all of the emotion that we were talking about earlier. This is a case that has just touched so many people across Hampton Roads. I mean, in my recent memory here, I've been here for a long time, and I can't recall a case that meant so much to so many people. Codi, only 3 years old, I guess at the time of his death. When he was introduced to us, we knew him as that 4-year-old little boy. His picture on billboards. You hear the emotion out there. Obviously, the defense attorney's not ready to talk about this, but Anton Bell getting ready to hold a news conference. Dan, they're talking to you about those confessions that were testified about during the trial, the things that he wrote in that composition book. That obviously had a big impact.
I think you're right. And Janet, if you could hang on with me, we've been told that we are allowed to come in here and speak with Anton right now. So
okay.
I do want to warn you, we are live, Mr. Bell. But we're going to go ahead and get set up for this news conference. Janet, if you could still hang with me, we will take that live here in just a moment. But any other questions or commentary, go ahead and pass it my way.
Okay. I'm very interested in finding out what Mr. Bell has to say in terms of how this case was handled. Dan, did you hear anything during the trial from the defense about how short their case was? And if my memory serves me correctly, I believe they presented their case in about a day and a half. Did anybody find that unusual with only 6 witnesses?
Yeah, Janet, it was just about half a day of testimony we heard from the defense. Not that I have heard, but that is certainly going to be a question we have. And Janet, if I could toss it back to you just for 2 minutes while we get set up, and I'll let you know when we're ready to take this news conference live.
All right, we'll do that. Okay, Dan Kennedy on the job there. I mean, doing exactly what he should do, and we really appreciate that. But yes, we're going to stand by for a few minutes. As you can see, a lot of emotion there at the courthouse there in Hampton, and we've been following this case since the very beginning. It started in January of 2022 when we got word that there was a little boy missing, a little boy named Cory Bigsby, and we began to see his pictures, and at that point, people from all over the area, all over the state really, and even had people who came in from out of state who came to Hampton trying to find, there he is, that little boy there. You wonder what's going on in his mind there, and that sort of solemn look that he has on his face. People came to the Buckrow area. That's the general area where he lived, wondering, at first we all hoped that this would end up happily. It did not. At first, the father, Cory Bigsby, was charged with child neglect, but that had nothing to do with Codi. Apparently, that had to do with the kids, his other kids that he has, and he was charged with child neglect. Then later, sometime later, the charges for murder, second-degree murder, came up. Nobody in this case. Codi has never been found. We know that that was a challenge for the prosecution. As Dan has mentioned, it's like the 4th time that there's been a nobody case. There was one very recently in Newport News that happened about a year ago, sometime last year, where a woman was killed by her husband. A lot of people followed that case as well. That happened in Newport News. And here, a nobody case. But apparently, that did not matter to the jury. The jury only deliberated for a couple of hours, came up with the verdict: 8 women, 4 men guilty on both charges, and they are 1, concealing a body, 2, second-degree murder, and Cory Bigsby faces up to 45 years in prison. Emotional trial, because there were several family members who had to testify, and a lot of people wondered throughout this whole thing about the mother, Codi's mother. We didn't hear much about Codi's mother and where she was during this, and while people were doing all of the searching, apparently she lives in D.C., and she did testify in the trial. She testified that for a while that she didn't even know where Codi was living with his father, but didn't know exactly where the address was. She testified, and then the little boy, 7 years old, Codi's brother, testified, who was only 5 at the time, and you can only imagine what that was like for that little boy. Now, he wasn't in the courtroom exactly. He testified via video, which was probably a good thing not to have that young son right there, only feet away from his father, and just think about how emotional that was. And then we heard from the aunt, who also testified yesterday. Codi's aunt, she testified for the defense, and she was disputing the timeline that the prosecution tried to put out there. Prosecution believing that Codi died around June of 2021. And she says, I saw him at a birthday party in September of 2021. He was reported missing January 2022. There was also the witness, a man who worked at worked in the area, who said he saw Codi in Food Lion a couple of days before he was reported missing. The jury also got to hear a 911 call because it was Cory Bigsby who reported Codi missing back in January of 2022. They heard that 911 call. They also heard about some confessions that he made while in jail, that he wrote in a composition book, that he beat Codi. And that's what really got to some of the people outside the courtroom, is when they heard that, they felt like this man is certainly guilty. And so, as you saw just a little while ago, they're very pleased that the jury saw it that way as well. Codi's picture, it was on billboards, flyers, Facebook pages, all over social media. People really poured their hearts into this, hoping to find that little boy. And as you just heard one lady just say, she is still hoping that Codi can be found. There was some talk about him possibly being buried in Maryland. We don't know about that. We know that there was a search there at one point. Nothing turned up. So that is still one piece in this whole drama, this whole saga that may never be satisfied. What exactly happened to Codi, and where is that little boy? Where is his body? And as the people were leaving the courtroom, we did see Dan try to talk to both sides, and obviously the defense not willing to speak. One attorney only saying that you all got what you wanted. You all presented the case in the media as if though he was guilty. We at 13 News Now feel like that we were very fair in showing both sides. And then Anton Bell, we're waiting now for the DA, for the Commonwealth's attorney, Anton Bell, who's going to be holding a news conference to get some reaction to the guilty verdict and what his team was able to do to bring some closure to all of the people, the thousands of people in the Hampton Roads area who have been following this case. All right. I think we're going to wait a little, if I can get some direction from the producer. Okay. All right. So we're going to go back out to Dan. He's live, I believe, in the Commonwealth's attorney's office somewhere. Okay. We see them setting up. Dan, are you there?
Hey, Janet. Yes, okay. I am. So we're here just waiting Commonwealth's attorney, Anton Bell. He's going to be standing here at this podium shortly once he's gathered his remarks and his staff. And they're going to brief us on this case. The guilty verdict coming down in less than 2 hours today from the jury. Of course, it has to be unanimous. It was unanimous as well this morning. This is only the fourth no-body case to be prosecuted in Hampton Roads. The prior three we had told you leading up to today had all ended in convictions. And now you have the fourth ending in a conviction as well. I just got a text message from Joe Slabinski, and Janet, if that name rings a bell, he was over Water Team Inc. That was the nonprofit search group that was out and about searching for Codi relentlessly, day after day, month after month for years. And Joe tells me, you know, this verdict still doesn't give us Codi, and perhaps that's what a lot of people are feeling today.
All right. Okay, Dan, thank you for that. So it should be momentarily when we get this news conference, and I know everyone is waiting to hear. Obviously, Dan, Anton Bell, I don't want to say upbeat, but probably pleased with this verdict, and knowing just how many people across the area were just kind of focused in on what's going to happen today with the verdict. I know I was a little surprised at how quickly the trial went. I think, just a little over a week. It started last Monday, jury selection taking the first 2 days, and then by Wednesday morning of last week, we heard the opening statements or the opening arguments in this case. Dan, anything else else you want to add about just some observations that you made. I know that you had an opportunity to talk to Ed Booth a couple of times. He talked about the challenges with the no-body case. He also gave some other commentary on some of the testimony. What was some of the takeaways that you got from his expertise?
Well, look, this was going to be a tough case from the beginning. It was circumstantial evidence only. There was no physical evidence here, but ultimately, Janet, that did not matter for the jury. So, yes, we will ask Commonwealth's attorney, Mr. Bell, about that. Certainly a big risk to take a case like this, but one that paid off for his office with getting the guilty verdict on second-degree murder and concealing a body.
What about Cory Bigsby during the trial? What about his reaction? Did you get to see his reaction when they read the guilty verdict and just the way he presented himself in court throughout the course of this trial?
Yeah, well, really no emotion that I saw today. Even when the verdict was read, Mr. Bigsby remained in his chair, reclined through much of the trial. We really didn't see much emotion from him, and we didn't get the chance to speak to some of his attorneys today to ask about his mindset. Of course, we are very much wondering what is next for his case, if there is any kind of chance for an appeal. But as for now, he returns back behind bars. Janet, as you know, he was out on bond after being behind bars for 15 months or so before he was granted bond last summer by the very judge who was overseeing this case, Judge Hawks, who was brought in, a retired judge from Portsmouth by the Virginia Supreme Court, just to hear this case. But Mr. Bigsby now returns behind bars. Sentencing will come at a later date. With that second-degree murder charge, he is looking at up to 40 years, and with the concealing a body charge, he is looking at perhaps an additional up to 5 years tacked onto that.
Can you talk a little bit, Dan, about some of the things that happened with him while he was in jail? I know we had some officials who testified about him being on suicide watch.
Yeah, we heard about that. In fact, today there was some clarification given on the exact date that he first went on suicide watch, and it came on June 19th of 2022, which, according to the prosecution, was exactly 1 year after Codi's death, according to the confession letter written by Cory Bigsby in jail, in which on the fourth confession letter he dated it June 18th was the day that Codi died. But he was in and out of that suicide watch ward for a couple times throughout the year, usually right around the times of those confession letters.
Was the courtroom packed today? I know a few days ago it was like standing room only. What about today, as people were expecting a possible verdict?
It was standing room only today. You had supporters of Codi Bigsby who have been there throughout the trial, all 7 days. It was a long one, going through 2 days of jury selection alone. You also had some members of Cory Bigsby's family who were on the left side of the courtroom, sitting behind the defendant, and they have also been here through much of the trial. Codi's mother was also in there throughout the trial after testifying, and in fact, she's at this news conference today.
All right, Dan, thank you. And our other reporter who has been on the scene and following this trial since the very beginning, Angelique Arentock. Let's go to her live and get some of the observations that she's made since the verdict was read. Angelique.
Hi, Janet. Good afternoon. Dan Kennedy is inside one of the courthouse buildings right now as Anton Bell, the Hampton Commonwealth's attorney, is getting ready to hold a news conference, of course, about the outcome of this trial. A jury this afternoon handed down guilty verdicts on charges of murder and concealing a body in connection to Codi's death. Cory Bigsby is now convicted in Codi's murder. We watched as family members tried to leave, avoiding talking to the press. We spoke briefly with one of Bigsby's attorneys, the lead counsel in this case, Curtis Brown, who implied that there was perhaps already some opinions coming in to this trial. So he touched on that. And when I asked him what's next, maybe in the Court of Appeals, he kind of avoided that answer a little bit. But when Dan stepped out of the courthouse to let you all know about the guilty verdicts, what I saw in the courtroom is Bigsby completely emotionless. And that's pretty much how he stayed throughout this entire trial. Throughout the end, he handed his family members his baseball cap, and he let the sheriff's deputies handcuff him, and he went into a back room. So he is now back in custody here in Hampton. I can also tell you that Hampton Commonwealth's attorney, Anton Bell, motioned to revoke Bigsby's bond. As you all know, kind of in the duration of this trial, Bigsby has been out on bond. And so Commonwealth's attorney, Anton Bell, wanted to go ahead and revoke that bond because of the convictions this afternoon. The judge went ahead and granted it, even though Bigsby's attorneys pleaded with the judge. Bigsby attended all these court hearings, and he's been compliant in that way, and he has a monitor on. But despite that, like I said, Judge James Hawks granted that motion to revoke the bond. I'm hearing that Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell is getting ready to speak right now.
All right, Angelique, thank you. Let's go back to Dan and to the podium where Anton Bell is about to speak. All right, we understand that he stepped out just a moment ago. Dan, are you seeing him at all in the room, or have you gotten any kind of an update on when he may actually come to the podium? Okay. Apparently, Dan is not on mic now, but we know at any moment that Anton Bell, the Commonwealth's attorney for Hampton, will be talking about this case. He certainly understands the weight of it and understands just the public interest in this case. As I mentioned earlier, I can't remember a case where so many people were tuned in to wanting to know more about next steps and just what's going to happen and just what happened today. There you can see that's the fence that I was talking about earlier, all the stuffed animals. And okay, let's go back to that podium, and Mr. Bell is about to speak.
Sir, I specifically asked for co-counsel and the chief of police to be here beside me. So tell me, are you guys ready? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to say to God be the glory, because I am a spiritual person, and I believe that he was literally ordering the steps of this trial. As many of you know, when we started out with this particular case, we were already behind the 8th ball, because we were already 6 months behind what had actually occurred. And we were able to prove that. But when someone has that much of a lead ahead of you, it makes it very difficult trying to go back and put the pieces together. So let me just first thank my trial and my litigation team, first with Dylan Arnold, who is a deputy in my office. He has done a phenomenal job in trying this case with me. And also my victim service director and my victim service assistant director, Carla Reeves and Latasha Powell Mason in the back, respectively. Just being able to help us with the number of witnesses. You guys know that there were a number of witnesses that were extremely large in number, and we were able to kind of, pare it down to just the necessary witness to be able to put this case on. The paralegals that were involved, Ebony Perry, who was the lead paralegal, and my assistant Nicolette Brown, who was also a part of this litigation team, my amazing investigators, who just did an awesome job in being able to put this case together, and then my in-house investigators, who also helped with being able to put all of the things together. But could I kind of focus a little bit first on Dina Abdul Kareem, the mother of Codi. I am extremely proud of her. It took such courage. And the reason why I say it took such courage, because there are things that happened behind the scenes in that relationship that the public did not know. And there were things that occurred that we could not bring into the court case because it would have been seen as prejudicial. So she had to sit there, as many of you heard, and really be defamed. She had to sit there and be called a bad mother. She had to sit there and really be looked down upon and keep her silence. And she did it with such grace and with such dignity. So this case was, for her, it was some level of a resolution and some level of accountability. It would never really be closure, because here's the problem. We still don't have a body. We still do not have the body, and probably will never have the body. So you can never bring complete healing and closure as a result of that. But nonetheless, for her, it was a day of victory and a day of justice. What she knew in her gut, that this man, this person, I won't call him a man, but this person had done such horrendous things to her baby, and he's now being held accountable for that. I have the chief of police up here, Chief Jimmy Weidman, on purpose. He doesn't like to be in the front of the camera, but I want him here because I really wanted to address the media to a certain degree in reference to a lot of the things that were said concerning if the police department had done enough, whether the police department followed certain leads, whether the police department followed tips, whether the police department had rushed to justice and so forth. And they took a beating in the beginning. They really did. And I'm so grateful for former Detective Stephen Rhodey, who I personally asked to be on this task force concerning investigating this case, and he took that job and he took ownership of it. And that is what our department is made of. They're made up of men and women who love their community, who love to see people find some level of justice for wrongs that have been committed against them. And so I wanted the chief here because I am so proud of your department, Chief. I'm so proud of how you also maintain your dignity and grace in the midst of the slander that took place. There were, particularly from the Defense Council, a number of press interviews and even a number of press conferences that she gave. And if you guys notice, I was unusually silent in this case. Normally, I don't have a problem talking to the press. I've never had a problem talking to the press. But I was very intentional in being silent concerning this case because I did not want anyone to be able to say that I tainted any potential jury pool. I didn't want anyone to say that we are trying to get a narrative out there that would be prejudicial to the defendant. I purposely waited until this trial was concluded and the jury, the community, spoke and said guilty, and then to speak to all of you. It's been a long journey, a long road. Commonwealth has never asked for a continuance in this case. If you all recall, every continuance, every delay has been by the defense. We have been ready day one. And we've been ready day one because the facts were there, the evidence was there, and our police department did an amazing job in being able to piece this puzzle together to get us to this day. And would it not be poetic justice that the day that we chose for the sentencing to be the anniversary, the third anniversary of the day that the defendant was convicted of murdering his 3-year-old child, which is June 18th, 2024. So just poetic justice. So with all of that, I open the floor to questions.
Mr. Bell, can you talk about the decision to put a 7-year-old on the stand, and would this verdict have been possible without his testimony?
It was a puzzle. And so what I had to do is put together a puzzle. And he was a big piece of that puzzle, but we believe that each piece was dependent on other pieces of that puzzle. He was able to confirm that June 18th date as far as when it happened, and he was also able to confirm the fact that that baby had been dead for months, because the last time he saw him, he was dead. And he went to the Busch Gardens in the Water Country, USA, right after that, and that was July 5th through the 14th and 16th. So he was able to give us that date, but he was more so able to confirm that he was indeed dead, and that confession that was retrieved from that composition book was not some bogus confession as the defense was trying to make it out to be, trying to paint him to be crazy or tortured or in some manner just losing it because he was going through this grief. No, his conscience was beating him up. His conscience was dictating why he was writing those letters, writing those confessions, saying those things, because that child was innocent, and the last image that child had was his father beating him to death. And so his conscience, he couldn't take it.
Attorney, when did you find out that Cory Bigsby would not be testifying, and had he testified, what was going to be your plan of attack? I
was going to have no mercy with him. If he took that stand, you would have seen another beatdown in the courtroom. It would have been a legal beatdown. So it would have been no mercy. And so that was his choice to not take the stand. We found out when they stated to the court that he was not going to take the stand. But cross-examination would have been something else to see.
During the trial, Mr. Curtis Brown has a very repetitive and combative demeanor, especially during your case. What sort of challenges did that present?
Well, here's the thing. My job is to represent the Commonwealth and the people of this city. His job is to represent his client. And so was he zealous in representing his client? Yes. Would I have done those things? Absolutely no, because I will not fall from dignity in order to lower myself to those standards. So that's his choice. He made it. He has to live with it. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think Mr. Brown is going to file appeal in this case?
Oh, I'm certain he will. But the Attorney General office, they handle Commonwealth Attorney appeals, and so we are confident that we absolutely laid out sufficient evidence for that appeal to be denied.
What about the child neglect charges against Mr. Bigsby? Where do those go from here?
Oh, we will try him on those cases too. We want full and complete accountability. So that's next.
Attorney, if he decides to allocute as to where the child is and what he did with the child, will you give him consideration in your sentencing recommendation?
Did I answer your question?
Probably
no.
What is your recommendation going to be on?
45 years. 40 years for second-degree murder, which is the max. 5 years for discharging or discarding a dead body. That's the most I can get. That's what I'm going to ask for.
Sir, is it going to be up to the judge, or does the jury have a say in the sentencing portion?
It is up to the judge.
At what point in this case did you know that you had the right guy?
Actually, early on. When he was over at the police department, there were things that were going on. For instance, we already knew what the search and rescue dog had detected. We already knew that the cadaver dog had already detected a dead body. So we already knew a dead body had already been in that room early on, very early on. And so the question now was, how do we prove it? Because it's one thing for you to think this is what occurred. It's another thing to be able to prove it. And so as time began to lapse, more evidence started to come together. We were able to download the digital images showing timelines. We were able to talk to Cory because Cory was getting older. So let me go here. So I'll go here because I could talk about that now. There was the allegation, and he hinted at it, but basically there was the allegation that Cory was somehow coached by either his mother or coached by myself. I have done, one of my specialties is trial cases involving children. I came to Hampton back in 2000. Wow, it's been 24 years. 2000, Peter, it's been a long time, hasn't it? Back in 2000, I came to Hampton, and my specialty was child sexual assault cases. So I am very familiar, that's very familiar territory for me, to be able to prepare a child for any type of testimony, any type of cross-examination, so forth. However, here was the thing with Cory. Cory was very young when it happened, and then Cory was dealing with that trauma, and he lived in D.C. So I had to build a rapport with him and be able just to get into his world where he could trust me. One of the questions I asked during jury voir dire was, would you find it difficult for a child to be able to trust an adult to tell them about their trauma? Absolutely. It would be very difficult. So I had to get in his world. So the few times that I met with him, the first few times I met with him, actually, we just got to know each other. It wasn't even what happened. I didn't even go there because he needed to be able to be disarmed. I had to create a safe space for him to, at some point when I start speaking to him, that he will be willing to share. And each time I spoke with him, he revealed a little bit more details and so forth, which again is not unusual, because again, the more I trust you, the more I'll share. The more I know that you'll protect me, the more I'll share. And that's what eventually happened. And whenever I speak with a child, whenever I prepare a child to testify, nobody else is allowed in the room. No victim service person, no parent, particularly a parent, because I don't need any interaction with the parent, and I want to make sure that there's no influence from that parent. I have to make sure that whatever that child is telling me is what happened, and they're not being influenced by any other person. And every time I spoke with him, I made sure no one else was in the room. So that child told you his trauma based upon his own recollection of that trauma. Yes, ma'am.
Why was it important for you guys to revoke his bond today? Did you trust he was not going to come back?
I don't trust. Let me just say this. This case impacted not just Codi or his mom, grandma, and their family. This case impacted the region. I had people texting me from Boston, from out of the area, wishing me good luck, expressing to me, please get justice for Codi. I had people throughout this region reaching out to our office saying, we're praying for you. We're hoping the best, that things will come out, that the truth will come out. And so for him to be found guilty of brutally beating this baby and then to be able to walk out the courtroom would have been a slap in the face of the citizens in this region. And so it was extremely important that they saw the justice system work properly.
Attorney, how important was it to show that there were no original pictures of Codi after June or July of 2021?
It was extremely important because it helped us with our timeline to establish it and to prove it. Also, the very fact that other children were located, photos of other children were located in his databases, but none of Codi. So that would explain why Codi was not in those pictures. He wasn't alive. In addition to that, they were trying to make it seem as if Codi, even if he killed them, maybe he killed them after September when his sister testified, which we found to be very uncredible, because this person gave multiple interviews to individuals before the indictment for murder, and she had already basically gave the timeline, and then after the indictment in 2023, she all of a sudden is going to say, oh, he was with us in September. But notice this. They had a photo of the sister and Cory back in 2020, early 2020, which would have made Cory around 3 because he didn't turn 4 until December 24. So it would have made him around 3 years old. But she didn't have a photo of Codi. And she was asked, this is a special occasion? You know, this is something to commemorate your mom's death and so forth. But you don't have a photo of Codi? You don't have any photo of any of the kids? None of them? Didn't happen.
Your assistant, Attorney Dillon, did a wonderful job. How proud are you of him?
Extremely. Extremely. Mr. Arnold took ownership of this case. This case has been going on for 2 years, and I wear multiple hats. I'm also the president of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys, so I'm the face of Commonwealth attorneys throughout this state or this Commonwealth. I'm also a minister, husband, father, so I have a lot of hats. I'm a very busy person, and so it was important that I had a second set of eyes. At some point in the case, sometimes you feel a little fatigue and you need a little boost in energy, and his youth absolutely gave me the boost that I need, but more so he was that second set of eyes, and he came in and he absolutely took ownership of this case as if it was his own case. And so I'm extremely proud of him, extremely.
Sir, I have a question. I don't know if you can answer this because of the nature, but if Mr. Bigsby actually took Cory to Busch Gardens repeatedly, as you mentioned, if Codi was out of the picture, where were the twins?
Home.
He had no babysitter.
Home.
Is that the child neglect charge?
Which I will not get into because I still have to try those. So I won't talk about the child neglect charges, but we allege that they were home.
Mr. What's the term for? You know, it's Mr. Name, Mr. Antoine Bell. How proud are you of yourself? This was a tough case. This was not, I know I'm going to win. This was a very challenging case. The jury could win in either direction. How proud are you of yourself?
Well, I don't put stock in myself. Like I said, I'm a very spiritual person, and so I'm very proud of my God and what he was able to accomplish and what's able to put together. I really feel that he helped us begin to put these pieces together. Mr. Arnold and I was talking. This is one of the rare occasions that a case actually gets better with time. The chief will tell you most cases don't get better with time. Witnesses get fatigued, evidence can get lost, or people decide that they just don't want to cooperate. People die, and you can't put that evidence in because that witness is no longer around. But this case actually got better with time. So with every delay that the defense, through their strategy, employed, it actually helped us and benefited us. And the reason I really believe it benefited us because, again, I believe that we were just servants to do the will and the business of the people. And today, the people prevailed.
Chief, do you have anything to say? I know he talked about your department's role in this. Do you have anything to say about this verdict?
Oh, well, of course. Today's been about justice for Codi. Always impressed and proud of Mr. Anton Bell and his staff. And our work isn't done. Of course, we still have to look and recover Codi. So our efforts won't cease until that is accomplished. And we offer the solicitation to the public to help us in that endeavor.
I'd like to ask a question that's going to be kind of like off the record, but it has to be asked. Do y'all fear that they're going to file some type of lawsuit against Hampton, Virginia?
They could. Anybody can file a lawsuit against anyone if they want to. The question is there going to be any merits to that lawsuit? So, I mean, their choice. Any other questions? All right. What? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate all that you were able to do. Have a great day.
You too.
Anton Bell, yeah, justice prevailed is what he said. You kind of feel like you can just take a deep breath now that we have reached this verdict and we've come to this point. Not closure, as he says, but a resolution. Not closure because Codi's body has never been found. To God be the glory. That's the first thing that Anton Bell said. He says his team was ready from day one to bring this case against Bigsby. Says it was difficult because they were behind the 8 ball, because they were 6 months behind. That's because he says, and they have proven, that little Codi died in June of 2021. That's when he died, and not January of 2022 when he was reported missing. And it's the 7-year-old boy, he said, that was the one that confirmed that Codi died in June. All right, let's go to Dan Kennedy. He has been listening to the news conference. And Dan, your observations about what Bell has said and how this case played out.
Stop the case. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just ask you a quick question.
Okay, all right. Apparently, he is doing some interviews. We'll go back to Dan, but Bell talked about, how he interviewed the little boy. I was talking about the 7-year-old boy, Codi's brother, who testified in the trial. And the more he trusted Bell, the more he talked. And so Bell was able to get him to confirm that timeline. And he knew that it was June of 2021 when little Codi died. And about the confessions from Bigsby, the confessions from jail, the things that he wrote in that composition book, Bell says that was his conscience beating him up, and that's why he wrote those things. All right, now Dan is ready. He's done his interview. So Dan, your observations about what Bell said and how this case played out.
Well, it was a long time coming for his office. As you know, this investigation first began in 2022, and I happened to be standing beside one of the instrumental figures in this case from the beginning, former Hampton Police Division Detective Stephen Rohde. Appreciate you being here, Steve. Yeah. All right, you're now retired, but you were very involved in this case. So what's today like for you?
I think it's a good step forward, like Mr. Bell said during the conference. They're halfway there. We got the conviction. He'll be in jail. But we still have to recover Codi, no matter what.
And you were also involved heavily with the task force.
I was leading that, yes.
You're leading the task force. Can you just pull back the curtain now that we have a verdict and tell us all the work, if you can sum it up in a few sentences, that went into trying to get to this moment today?
Well, the task force entailed several of us, captains, sergeants, lieutenants, so it gave us different insight of what we had to look for. And we started from the beginning, just scratch, like it just happened. We just got the call because we had to review all the statements from the officers that got on scene, and up to the point where we're getting tips, and we had to follow those tips up. And several of the tips led us to go different jurisdictions and out of state, obviously, to Maryland, where we did a 2-day intensive search with the cadaver dogs, dug a lot of areas, walked through a lot of swamps and woods, and trying to find him.
Well, thank you for all your work behind the scenes investigating and for talking with us today. It's an impressive 30-year career at Hampton Police Division. If there was a homicide during that time, he was likely investigating it. Janet, we're going to make our way outside, and if you'll give me 5 minutes, I can talk to you again then just a few moments.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. We appreciate your hard work out there. And again, back to the Anton Bell news conference, one of the things that struck me that he said, Bigsby never took the stand, but Bell says that he would have given Bigsby a legal beatdown had he taken the stand. Again, a case where closure isn't quite possible. The retired detective that Dan just spoke to, he alluded to the fact that we still have not found a body. That is something that they want to be able to do to really bring this case to a rest. It is a resolution, justice for the mother. Bell talked about how proud he was of the mother who testified. There are things that went on in that relationship, he says, that obviously they could not bring up during the trial. So there's a lot about the mother, she's right there, that people don't know exactly how that relationship played out. He's going to be continuing with the child neglect charges against Bigsby as well. Not willing to talk much about that. Those were charges that came before the murder charges involving the other kids. He will recommend 45 years for the murder charge and concealing the body. And he says he's very proud of quote, "My God," when asked how proud he is of himself and what he's been able to do with this case. All right, let's go back now to Angelique Arentock. She has been doing a stellar job following this case and reporting on it every day. So, Angelique, what do you have now?
So you heard Commonwealth's attorney Anton Bell for Hampton there say that today marks a day of victory and justice for Codi's mother, but perhaps we might never reach closure in this case as long as Codi's body has not been found. Hampton Police Chief Jimmy Weidman spoke about his mission being to recover Codi's body and to, in fact, do that as many people in this community seek closure. And he said the work is not done. Now, Bell also thanked his deputy in this case, Senior Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Dylan Arnold, for his work and service. But I also just want to touch back on the moments inside the courtroom after that guilty verdict was read by the court clerk and then ultimately by the judge. Cory Bigsby did not show any emotion. In fact, when he was standing up, he took off his baseball cap and gave it to his relatives sitting right behind him. Sheriff's deputies handcuffed him and took him to a back room. Again, he is now in custody once again in the Hampton City Jail, or maybe inside the courthouse right now as they work to maybe process some papers. But when that verdict was read, I can tell you the room, especially my side with supporters of Codi Bigsby, let out this sigh of relief. Dan Kennedy and I will continue delivering live team coverage for you starting on 13 News Now at 4.
All right, Angelique, thank you, and good job out there. We appreciate it. And yes, continue to follow 13 News Now. We're going to have live team coverage coming up at 4 o'clock. That's just an hour and 15 minutes. You can always log on to 13newsnow.com and our 13 News Now Plus app. We have all the information there. Cory Bigsby, guilty of second-degree murder and concealing the body of young little Codi Bigsby. All right, thank you for joining us for this breaking news. We're going to return to regular programming, and we'll be back at 4 o'clock. I'm Janet Roach.